Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Riddles Around the World with me. I am your host. My name is Johnny, and we got the man of God right over here. How you doing, Shane?
I'll be ready when you stop calling me that.
Hey, you told me to call you that, so you're stuck with it now. So today we have a very interesting topic, something I've wanted to talk about for a while. This is going to be Supernatural Creature Day. Now, what that means is today is going to be a generalized episode. We're going to talk about a bunch of different ones, and later in the coming weeks, we will dive deeper into some of them. Probably not all of them, but most of them are going to get their own episode because they are episode worthy, in my own opinion. So, to start things off, we're going to talk about mermaids / sirens because they're kind of sort of the same thing if you want to talk about them from a mythological standpoint. So, Shane, have you seen the videos of the mermaids from the documentaries and stuff? Have you seen that?
I've seen a few, yes.
What do you think? Real, fake, played? What are you thinking?
All right, I'm going to say that I'm usually a skeptic. I admit that.
Mm-hmm.
I also will admit I haven't seen many. The ones I have seen look like total crap. Okay, not convincing at all.
You're like 3 miles under the water. What do you expect?
No, it don't matter, right? Like you're 3 miles under the water. I can tell you what a shark is when it swims by. Okay,
But sharks aren't going to be there. Whatever. Different topic, different time. Continue. Sorry.
I'm just saying I don't understand how everything else is so well defined, and then that mermaid comes in and it gets all blurry. Like that's just I'm not convinced.
Technical difficulties. It happens all the time.
Yeah, right when the mermaid gets there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a couple of there was a documentary, I think in 2013. I think I could be wrong on that date. Don't hold me to that. They were actually down and looking, and you could see a mermaid hand and face clear as day. Popped up on screen for maybe half a second. Calling it a mermaid is pretty much the only thing you can call it, is because you can't really classify what it looked. It was very humanoid. It looked like the blue fish from Hellboy. Legitimately, that's what it looked like. I'm not kidding. Like it had the same structure. And then I think in that same documentary, it might be a different one, they had a drone type thing underwater, and there was a bunch of fish circulating it, like just schooling around it basically. And then cameras panning left to right, and all the fish kind of scatter, and then there's a spear goes through one of the fish. A primitive spear, like it looked like somebody tied it up with like some cordage type stuff. You don't see that underwater. I'm just saying.
I wish I could see that video.
I'll send it to you. I'll have to find it again, but I know for a fact I've seen it, and the reality of it could be fake. I'm not gonna lie to you, but do you think, with the vastness of our ocean, there is a possibility that the old folktale stories of sirens singing to men in the ocean was a possibility?
All right, I'm going to say that the sirens are a definite no.
Really?
Only because the idea was they were something that could be in and out of the water either way, like live either way. That's just not plausible. Mermaids, I'll I'll, I'll go benefit of doubt and say as much ocean as there is, it is possible, yes, that they're there and we don't know about it. I'd also say it's stupid to say it's more than possible. Because if they were even remotely humanoid and shaped, like the way that we're shaped is based off of the way we interact with the environment. Right? So if they're even remotely humanoid, they wouldn't be designed for deep water. So not only would they be sighted often or sighted, they'd be sighted often because they would be staying in, if not shallow water, then near the surface.
Okay, I can see that argument.
Probably even near the shore, or maybe in like coral reefs and such. But we've explored those enough that we would have found much more evidence of them by then. Like, why have they got hands if all they're doing is swimming around in the deep?
I mean, you naturally adapt to the water. You stay in the water long enough. So, I mean, maybe their body just naturally adapted to it.
But again, if it did,
maybe
they wouldn't have faces like this and hands like this.
Maybe, hear me out on this. This could be a ecological thing. What if the deeper they went down in the water, their body changed to adapt? That's a possibility. That could be a reason that they have been hidden or stayed hidden as long as they have. What if they look look more humanoid when they come up because they're touching the rockier surfaces like coral reefs or the rocks on the bottom. What if that's the case? What if they lose more of the humanoid features when they go deeper?
If they had that level of adaptation, then you could make that argument. But then there would still be evidence that they used to be in the other areas. There still be some kind of like fossil evidence, whatever, skeletons, what anything to
Just
show that
don't
there used to
fossilize that
be
well.
a decent number of them. No, but I mean, uh, volcano erupts or an earthquake comes through and breaks apart the coastline, and suddenly you've got land that's dry that used to be undersea. There'd be fossils there. That's why we have so many fossils of things like dolphins, whales, sharks, whatever. Why not
Hmm.
mermaids?
Okay, I'm just gonna throw it out there
If
while we're out
if
here.
if they move,
Atlantis. Let's talk about it. Just throw it
oh
out
god,
there. There, we're going off the Aquaman movie here with Atlantis. How smart and technologically advanced. I'm just kidding. We're not doing that. I can see the look on your face right now. Calm your tits, okay? I wasn't gonna jump down the rabbit hole to mess with you.
it's a deep
Although,
rabbit hole.
yeah, that is a vastly deep rabbit hole we're not gonna deal with. I mean, again, that is possible. We find fossils all the time that we have no clue what they are. What if it was one of those adaptive changes and it's fossilized and we're just like, I don't know what it is. What if,
The only thing
I
about
know that's a big what if, but I mean,
well, no, it's not. But I would say, for example, like in situations like that where something becomes land that used to be underwater, you typically find large portions of fossil because since they whatever the creature was designed to be undersea, it couldn't travel very far. It didn't try to move away and get broken down or attacked and partially eaten or whatever. When
okay,
you
well,
get
I
very
have
far,
I have another argument that we're kind of skipping over a little bit. We're looking at those more of a humanoid incident, correct? Mermaids.
yes,
Okay, let's take the humanoid aspect away. Yes, they look like humans, but what if we take the animalistic side of them? Your argument is the volcanoes and stuff. I'll accept that. And okay, let's accept this. Most animals have a natural instinct when a natural disaster is going to happen. That is a fact, scientific fact, actually. What if we're taking it from too much of a humanoid stance? What if we take it more from the animalistic? Let's say the reason we don't have the fossils of them is because they sensed that there was going to be a natural disaster. What if we take
that,
it from
that
that point?
well, so that is a good point. We could maybe argue that. I would still say the only thing with that would be is it's not that sense they have isn't foolproof,
True.
and there could still be problems with it. For example, if it's a volcano, not or if it's an earthquake, and it's an earthquake out at sea, those tsunamis are going to push them in, right? Or if it's the volcano and it's erupting, even as it erupts, it could spray enough ash or the lava would come down and
Hmm.
could cut them off in some way from getting away. So I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I just wonder if that would be a possibility. I will say, as far as them being more animalistic, I am a nerd. I'll admit it. My first thought is the mermaids in Harry Potter. In Goblet of Fire, when they're under the lake and they see those mermaids, right? They're
Were those
only remotely
mermaids?
humanoid. Yeah,
I thought they were more like squid octopus type, right?
there
They
were
had,
Grindylows in there, but there were also mermaids garden, right? And in the books, they do specify that it was mermaids because Dumbledore spoke to them in the mer language, right? So if you're looking at that kind of mermaid, then
I think that's a
I would go
possibility.
as far as to say that if they were real, there's no reason why they couldn't avoid us because they would be built for the environment they're in and to be able to get away from us.
I think I stand a very solid argument. Just
I would
coming from
I
me.
would argue we probably would still have some evidence of it, but
I mean, there is
if they've got
videos.
like really deep water dwellings, I mean, I guess it's reasonable.
Well, if we also take an animal point of view from it, and let's kind of like mash them together a little bit, animal and human. Let's take an animalistic sense of wanting to hide yourself and your population from predators because humans are natural predators to everything. They see something, they want to kill it and explore it, just dissect it and all that. What if we take that aspect and I don't want to say the hollow earth theory because that's stupid. Or not stupid, but that's a different topic. Let's take it to the point where like they have caverns underwater that we don't explore, but they're smart enough to camouflage it. Such as like boulders, and they're not necessarily boulders, but they can open up a boulder like as a door and then move it back. That way, when you looking for tunnels and stuff, you can't find it. What if that's a
It's a,
way they naturally hide themselves, and then they come out to hunt, and then they go right back?
if you're mixing animalistic and human, and you want to say they've got that level of intelligence, then in that scenario, I'd say that's possible. At the same time, if it was that level of intelligence, I think we probably know about them more because if they're even remotely our level of intelligence, we'd have been at war with them at some point. They'd have been attacking coastal villages or whatever because we'd be messing up there unless they are just super deep water only.
I mean, they might.
Then
Yeah.
when we go fishing, we mess with their food. When we pollute the water, we're messing with their
All
environment.
right. Well, let me also argue this then. We have a lot of stories that came from the old days. What if? What if that's where the stories came from? The fact that they actually did have some, not necessarily a war, so to speak, but a dispute over that. What if that's the case from where you hear the old stories of the old fishermen going missing? Granted, the old fisherman was probably drunk and fell in the water and died, but I'm just, for the argument's sake, what if?
No, no, you're right. I would say this to try to figure that out. The first thing I'd want to know is the depictions of mermaids or mermen that include weapons. I'd want to trace that. If you notice, one of the things that's interesting about them is that it's always depicted as tridents. I think that's
when
because
you're
they just.
when you're
I
fishing in
think
the
they.
water, tridents are the best thing.
What I mean, they can be, but so can a spear can be too. I think it's just because they're in the ocean, they're attributed to Poseidon. Because
Uh,
Poseidon
yeah,
trident was kind of representative of the sea and the power of the sea, right? And that's just my thought process. I'm not saying that is the thing. I'm saying that would be my
I
first
can agree with
impression.
that. But
Is
also at the
is
same time, think about it. If you're going spearfishing, so from the shallow water, the more points you have, the better chances you have of hitting the fish or multiple fish if they're schooled up. So them being depicted with tridents or pitchfork like weapons like that, that would just be a naturally better weapon to have in the
well, that's
water.
sort of it's sort of a catch 22 just because if they were intelligent enough to be able to make a tool like that and realize something like, hey, let's just add more points to the spear. It'd also
Hmm.
be intelligent enough to be able to get better with a regular spear. So they wouldn't need the trident. So I still feel like there's got to be some kind of connection to the symbology there, whatever that is. And again, I'm just guessing with the Poseidon thing.
Yeah.
But I would also say that if you notice, there are some versions of them where they will capture sailors with nets. So that does tie back to the fishing line.
Yeah.
But again, that's also could just be a symbology of representative of what people used the sea for at the time. So I
I
don't know.
will.
I'd want to trace that.
I would argue that mermaids and sirens are the same. And hear me out on it. I would say that mermaids are mermen, actually, hunters and stuff like that. And the sirens would be the mermaid females, and they would lure humans out. I'd say, I know you said the likeliness of them would be completely different. But if you look at them both from a mythological standpoint, if you look at each point of them, the only difference is one of them seems to attract men,
Right.
and then the other ones are just hunters of the ocean. So if you take that, you could take that and make it a male female situation. The females could be the ones that attract the fishermen in. Let's say the fisherman was out fishing, had a big haul of fish. They were going back to the town, and he's on his way back, and he sees this attractive lady in the water. He's like, "Hey, I need the help." She attracts him in. The male comes and gets the fish. They take the man. What if?
I guess my only with that would be if they had the ability to sing in a way that was
Yeah,
not just musically entrancing, but the idea was that they could actually, like, if you go into Greek mythology of sirens, is they could tell you about your inner desires. So obviously that's not a thing. But even if they could reach the point of being able to sing in such a way that it entrances you, and they can use words, I'll be honest with you, I don't believe in that level of evolution.
okay, so
And even
this
if
is
you
my
want, even if
argument against that. I agree with the
well, hang on,
evolutionary.
I gotta clarify here because evolution and adaptation are the same thing, right? I
Yeah.
believe that creatures can adapt, but I think the adaptation part is the only way they could adapt in little increments up to the level of being able to do something like sing so they can attract us. they would have to be able to regularly and often do that over the course of decades or centuries. I don't think that would have happened.
Okay. My only argument, I'm going to go off on that, is you don't hear about sirens and stuff now.
Right.
Most of those stories are back in the day. You still hear stories about mermaids, but the biggest argument for the sirens that I would give you, take it back 100 years ago. If you heard somebody that had a lovely voice, it would entice you because it was so rare. That's
Oh,
that. That's my argument. I
I'm
got
not saying you're wrong. I think it's the fact that they could supposedly use words, and even if you want to go as far as to say they had the ability to just make musical notes beautifully, they'd have to have the ability to do that and function underwater.
okay. Well,
That's
if you
that's
take how
that's
they
some
could
pretty
take
complex
take
vocabulary.
whales, how they communicate underwater is how they is basically a very large hum.
Right.
What if that's the case? They just poked their head out and did their hum, and it reverberated in the air different than it did under the water. I think
I
I
don't
used
know.
that word right, didn't I? I believe I
Yeah,
did.
you did.
I was I had two words going in my head. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the right one.
I don't know enough about acoustics to be able to say if that's possible. Like, can sound
And
waves
again,
do that in that
most
way?
siren stories happened in a cove. It wasn't like out in the middle of the ocean. So that means that it would echo off the cliffs around them.
Well, see, that's another thing too, is that would probably, I don't know, it seems like that would make it less enchanting because
Well,
the echo coming back would clash with the actual singing. If you're ever in a room, like a big room with bad acoustics, you can hear the sound coming back and it clashes with the sound you're making. That's kind of what I would picture there. The other thing is,
well,
if you notice, it is always in coves, even though they lived in the ocean. But the reason is because most fishing happened close to shore, or
mhm,
most sailing, because it was all about fishing and such. Or just traveling. It wasn't going across the ocean.
mhm.
So the fact that they seem to be restricted by where people are would make it sound like they were more predatory. But again, it would take a long time and a lot of adaptation for them to reach that level of being able to prey on humans. But if they got that good, then they wouldn't have lasted till now just because of our technology, but they still would have lasted till much more recently than they supposedly did. Because you don't hear about it
Yeah,
much after Greek times. And I would assume that's because Romans weren't all that interested in the sea, so a lot of their mythology around the water they stole from Greece kind of just faded away.
yeah,
And we've also been we've been on that way longer than I thought we were going to be.
yeah. I
I
was
didn't
about
mean
to
to
say
bring
we jumped down a rabbit hole, and now we're just kind of we're like
it.
18 minutes in, and we're still talking about mermaids.
So my bad.
No, no, it's fine. I mean, we both had very compelling arguments. I'm still going to say that mermaids 6.5 out of 10. They're real. Sirens, I don't know. I'm not gonna give a rating on.
I'm gonna give them a 1 and a 2. To be honest with you, yeah, that's
What
enough.
the? Not gonna say it. All right, let's jump into our next creature. One that you might actually know quite a bit about because you kind of look like vampires. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
You pale, pasty bastard. No, I'm just kidding.
All right,
Okay,
vampires. All right, like the best supernatural creatures. We can do the same things we do with zombies. Is there's so many different versions of them.
this is true.
So if we want to just the first question of is it even possible that they're real? I'm going to outright say no. Only because there's a convenience to the mythology of the way they died and there's no evidence. There's a
No.
convenience to the way that any time that we would be able to see them are the times when they can't be out. And all the things that people used to take comfort in, because that was in time when the Catholic Church was the biggest thing out there. So
Hmm.
holy water and crosses do all this damage to them. That's just all so convenient. I
See,
really feel like
I
it was
think those
created as horror
ones.
stories, and that was it.
I think those and the garlic were the ones that I always thought was like, you're shit.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember
No,
what how the garlic tied in, and you might remember. I don't.
I never looked into it. It never made any sense to me. But
I think it was just
let's.
the smell. What didn't it originally come just from the idea that they had the ability to smell very well, which is why they could smell blood,
I think so.
and garlic just stinks.
Now, see, here's my. I'm going to argue against you on this one, just for the simple fact that there is a ton of shit in this entire planet that we still don't. You're right. Sorry, but there's a ton of stuff that we have no clue about that's still happening as we explore the world. There's still places on the planet that, like ground, we have not searched, we have not seen. I will argue that yes, it does. It doesn't make sense, but there's a lot of recorded events throughout history that makes no sense when it comes to not necessarily supernatural things, but people being super fast back when it's back in the day when it wasn't needed, or I don't know the proper way to use this in the term, so I'm not going to say it. But like back in the day, you didn't need to run 40 miles an hour. You didn't need to be able to lift a boulder the size of a person. You didn't need to do all these things, and there are recorded events of where people was able to do that. So what if that is an interference due to biological disease that could potentially be vampirism? Yeah, that's how you say that.
Vampirism, yeah.
Yeah. So
Vampirism?
yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. We're gonna move on. but like, what if that's the case? Like, let's take what Dracula Untold, or the Untold Stories. The one with the what's his name? He's a British actor. He's really popular.
Yeah, he's got the scar.
Yeah. All right. Let's take how he got his powers. Dracula was stuck in a cave. He was trapped in there by I don't remember if it was magic or he was cursed to the cave.
Luke Evans.
Yeah. Say let's go off that how that was depicted, because in my personal opinion that's the best way they do his storyline, which is something completely different.
Right.
He finds the cave, asks for help, and he's like, okay, all you gotta do is drink my blood, but you're gonna have my powers. And what if that's where it came from? It stemmed from one creature that was created and was like, hey, this is how things are gonna go from now on. I can give you my power, but you're gonna have to. It's a give and take.
Yeah.
So let's say let's use Vlad the Impaler as an example, just because he's typically the one that people use.
The guy, yeah.
Yeah. Let's use him. Let's say to win the war that he was in, he went to this cursed cave, found the cursed creature. And the creature was like, "You drink my blood, you can have my power." And then he was too weak to resist the urges of the power that he got, and it released the actual Dracula, and that's how it spread. But we can also take that, and over time, it would mutate into something else. So maybe you would come into stuff like Blade, where you have a Daywalker. I know that's completely different stories and whatnot.
No, I'm going to come back to the Blade thing. So
just as an evolutionary aspect, I wanted to say that.
Yeah.
So like we're talking way back in the day, like the 80 times, and you have a virus or whatever it is. Let's call it a virus just for simplest terms. It's gonna mutate over time. If you have something that makes you immortal, where you cannot die unless certain circumstances happen, like back in the day, holy water, silver, stakes to the heart. If those were the things that would kill you over time, you would naturally become immune to them, because those are the things that you're going to be exposed to more throughout that time. So eventually you would have a natural immunization to it. Can't speak, I apologize. So therefore you would get to a period where today we're like, maybe that's where the super introverts come from. I'm stretching and reaching, obviously, but it's an entertaining thought. You can entertain that in that kind of aspect. I feel like you're looking something up just to prove me completely wrong right now.
No. I'm just trying to get my thoughts straight here. All right. Because you went for 3 points. So let me see. All right. So starting off, the first thing you mentioned was locality. As far as it being, there are some places on Earth that we haven't explored, or even there's some that we just haven't explored enough that we could be sure that we didn't find in the area.
Just to clarify what I meant by that, somebody could have found those areas back in the day, and we haven't discovered it, and that's how it would be transitioned into my other point.
I mean, I could see that argument, even if you just wanted to say, if if a team of 3 people is exploring some deep jungle or desert that no one else has ever really explored, they might have got caught by the creature.
Yeah.
So I can see where you're going. Whole thing I would say that I really don't think there's if vampires have even the slightest actual need to feed on people, they couldn't be in those remote regions, right? Like
What if
they
they're
would have
feeding? They
they,
they
they
could
could
be in
they could
those.
maybe like base of operations and go back there, but they
Well,
would have to
they
venture
could
out.
use that as maybe. All right, let's say. Well, let's take Vlad the Impaler. Say he went to those remote regions and only fed on animals simply because he didn't want to turn into Dracula or whatever the original guy's name was. In that movie, he was Dracula and he turned
Right.
into Dracula. But let's say the original Dracula, number one. What if we'll call him Dracula just for easy sake? What if he turned him into it and he said, "Hey man, I'm not going to cave into your power," and went to those remote regions and only did animal blood because it's never specified that it has to be human blood in any of the mythology or the lores. It just
Um,
says blood.
but well, it is in some of them, but it's
Okay,
it's
yeah,
it's the more remote versions. I would still say that kind of like going back to animal instinct thing. If there's that level of predator staying anywhere for any length of time, animals are going to get out,
true.
right? Like you drop a tiger in a habitat it's not natural to, the prey is going to figure it out and they get out of there.
Hmm.
So I would say if that happened, there'd still be some way to figure out something was wrong in that area, and people would investigate if they're even sort of nearby. Okay, they're going to figure out what's messing up, like scaring off all the animals, whatever. They're going to put out bait, like a whole goat on a rope thing. They're going to
Hmm.
find ways to try to figure out what's going on. So I would say the locality. I see the logic behind it. I just don't think the locality argument would work even
Okay.
into just recent times. Like we by now we would have found something. If you're going with the evolutionary dilution, which is the idea that over time it would mutate to some degree. What would happen is as they changed, they would change into weaker and weaker vampires. Going back to the Blade reference, when they
Hmm.
found the first one, he was so much stronger than they were, had abilities they didn't have, like his ability to shapeshift. And I think if I remember correctly, he even made a reference to the fact that they were so weak, their blood was so diluted that they were just shadows of himself or whatever, like they were
Yeah,
whips, right? That's what would happen over this period of time, is
I didn't think about that.
they would actually because it wasn't,
They wouldn't be pure bloods.
well, yeah, because the idea would be that whatever he's passing on, they're not because they're not born like an animal of its own, it's something that affects them. Whatever it is affecting them would get weak as it got it may be just like a barely weaker, like an unbelievably small level weaker that you
Hmm.
can't tell at first, but over centuries, it would make a difference.
Yeah, that makes. I didn't think about that argument.
Which also battles the third part, the part we mentioned, the way they could develop immunity to their weaknesses. It would actually work in the reverse. Over time, they would probably develop more weaknesses as it got weaker. Now, they might be able to adapt to some of their weaknesses if it's something natural, like if garlic didn't just repel them by smell, it was something that actually made them sick. That might be something that over time they adapted to with limited exposure or whatever.
Hmm.
Kind of the way that you get like small doses of something over time to become immune to it. That might happen, but like if it's daylight, how do they become immune to it if it immediately kills them? Well,
Well,
there's
that
no way
also
for them.
depended on the depiction of vampires, because some of them it didn't immediately kill them. Some of them it
Right,
just burned
right.
them, and then it's kind of like how we get sunburned. It would affect them in that kind of way, and it was just longer exposure. Like I don't think it was minutes, but you still
Yeah,
have you can go out and if you have a 5 minute window where you're like, okay, in 5 minutes I'm dead. You go out there and spend a minute, a month. Eventually, you might extend that period of time.
I'm, I'm trying to remember what I was watching. Maybe it was the Van Helsing show where there was a vampire who kept trying to build up their tolerance to the pain of the sun. So they just hold it under the light, hold the arm up, and they yank it. I can't remember what it was. I have to think about it some more. But even then, that's not how it works with something that's not a natural process. Like the way that you adapt is tuned to the way your body is supposed to be, not the way it is. Right?
Hmm.
Even people, we've diluted a little bit over time. That's why we have more sicknesses and more disabilities, physical or otherwise,
Yeah.
is because our gene pool has just steadily deteriorated over millennia. So it happened with vampires too. And they might develop some immunities, but they would also develop more weaknesses at the same time. If they didn't, if they just became immune to everything, then they would just be apex predator. We'd know about them because they wouldn't be scared of us.
Okay. I'll give you that one. Still, I'm gonna give it a 50-50 shot of it being real. Just gonna give you a shit and just I'm giving it a half right there. I got to.
I'm I'm
Now,
I'm a I'm gonna be nice and give them free.
okay.
Only because if they were a thing, then they could maybe stay hidden in small numbers. Like don't ever turn one, just kill it. We don't need more of us. Just you know, keep it stealthy.
Okay. Well, I know we had. Yeah. Okay. So we had we had discussed beforehand a whole list of things we were going to talk about, but we spent 18 minutes on fucking mermaids and sirens, not expecting it. So what I'm, this is right now happening. We're gonna have a part two for this where we talk about other things, but we will end on a good one just for y'all, and that will be. Do you want to do one or both of them, Shay? The ones we talked about at the beginning.
That is, I mean, I'm following your lead. Whatever you want to do.
All right. Well, let's talk about demons. Mister Man of God himself over here. Talk about demons. Let's have some fun with that one.
All right.
I'll let
So,
you take the lead. I'll follow on this one.
all right. The first thing I'm just going to say is common mythology and depictions of demons are not based off of what many Christians would call scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are the idea that they are their own creature that's like either somebody's that's twisted soul that now serves Satan, or a creature that Satan made, or a creature that was always serving Satan, whatever. None of that fits scripture. In fact, all we know about them is the idea of them being fallen angels is the most correct if we're going with the Christian kind of depiction of demons. There are other versions of demons in certain branches of Christianity, like the Catholics. They have their whole encyclopedia of their demons and all that, but that's based all entirely off of stuff that's not in the Bible. That's stuff that what they call the church fathers know. So if you really want to get down to saying what demons are, all they are is angels that were punished for rebelling against God. And even that, it's debatable whether it was rebellion or God just told them to do something they didn't do it, which is sort of rebellion, but not as active of a rebellion as we
Mm-hmm.
often imagine. Like they weren't at war with God necessarily; they just didn't do what they were told.
Okay, so
So they were cast out in Satan's place.
my question to you is: do you believe that there is a chance that we interact with demons not on a daily basis, but interact with them at some point in time in our life? Because I have stories from a personal level from me that I can potentially say was demonic. Now, the confirmation of this could be sketchy because this was when I was 9 years old, 9.
Yeah,
So I was a child, so I will throw that out there. But I also will say, is it possible? Do you think that the need of exorcisms is a possibility?
yeah. Okay, that's a tough one. Now, the New Testament does make references to demons being cast out. I'm trying not to get too much into religion here, but you kind of have to with
Well, I
demons.
was going to say with the demons. I mean,
Yeah,
religions kind of come just bear with us. We're not doing this in a meaningful, hateful way. It's just it's got to be brought
yeah.
up.
Um, there are references in the New Testament to demons possessing people and being cast out. But if you notice, even those accounts fade. Not necessarily. Don't try following the New Testament books in the order that they're in the Bible, because that's not chronological. If you follow them in a chronological order, you'll notice the accounts of things like demon possession and demons being cast out steadily lessens to the point where
Hmm.
it's not really referred to anymore. And there are some pretty, I'm not going to go into it, but just for if anybody's interested, there's some pretty interesting study into the idea that according to the New Testament, demons would actually all be cast out by a certain point that would have been around, not necessarily Jesus' time, but close to that. So I would argue no, because I'm a pretty big believer in some of those ideas. And if I say any more, it's going to be preaching. But I would say no. And there's of course we kind of depict the idea that whenever we're tempted by something, it's a demon tempting us. That actually doesn't fit scripture.
That's just
Um,
temptation.
the only time that we see those kind of depictions are when they were possessing somebody, they made the person they possessed do something. And as far as just like whispering stuff in our ear, that's a mythological thing. It's not a Bible thing. Um,
Okay, so
I think that's everything.
I know you're more of a skeptic about things.
Mm.
So have you actually watched any of the documented videos of where those things have taken place, like demonic possessions and stuff? Like what was it? The movie Right was based, or not based off a true story, but depicted off a true story, I think is the right terminology for that. The one that the dude who played Hannibal, I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with actors' names.
Oh, right, RITE. Yeah,
Yeah. All
yeah.
right. So that was
Um,
depicted off of true events, I believe. I don't know. I don't remember the right terminology. It wasn't based off a true story, but it was based off true event. Stuff
I'm
like
trying to.
that,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of actual stories from churches. Like, I mean, it's the Catholic Church, obviously, but that deal more with stuff like that. But if you take incidences like that, let's say 1 in 1,000 is potentially real. I still like if there's 1,000 stories that they wrote about all these things, you can't say that every single one of them there's no way in hell.
Yeah,
That's
I'll say this.
the law of probability.
Oh, no, I see what you're saying, but the only thing I would say with that is unlike other mythology, um, demons possessing people had a starting point, since at one time it was happening. So that would help it be something that there were more suspicions of or accounts of over time. And I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
it denies it. That's just a thought. And I'm going to go kind of a roundabout answer here. There's a series by Frank Peretti, Piercing the Darkness, This Present Darkness, and I think there's a third one. I can't remember the name of it if there was. And what he does in it is he shows spiritual battles of the main characters as having angels and demons fighting over them. And what happens is whenever somebody's trying to make a bad decision, that demon is latched onto them, trying to make them do that, and the angels have to fight them off to keep it from happening. So he literally draws it in his stories as the demons and angels battling it out, influence the decisions people are making. And I think we kind of view it that way sometimes, but the truth is the only account we have of anybody being directly tempted or affected outside of those possessions is Job in the Old Testament, who was tested directly by Satan only after God allowed it. So again, I'd go back to saying that there are these accounts, there are all these different ways they're supposedly influenced, the way they can supposedly even pass the demon on if the exorcism isn't done correctly. But between the fact that none of those fit accounts in scripture and the fact that it is exclusive to the groups that believe in it is kind of suspicious.
Well, I mean, let's. I don't want to say
Well,
get sidetracked on that in the sense of it's exclusive to those who believe it. Voodoo is the same way. They say the only way to stop voodoo is to not believe it. So
which is
again, that could
convenient,
be
because that means they can't affect non-believers. But
yeah.
that's a
So I
different
mean
discussion.
that could be a whole, like I said it in the last episode, that could be a whole episode in itself. But if you take it from that point of view, that is a possibility. You take
Well,
you take non-believers and be like, oh well, I don't believe in that, then it can't affect them. Okay, but there, it's going to sound stupid to say this. There's got to be a line, because if we're looking at all of these supernatural creatures, all of them, if you look at any of the lores or mythologies of any of the ones that we've talked about just tonight, they all have a set of rules. Like
yeah,
sirens was only in water; you'd never encounter them outside of the water. Vampires have to be invited into your house. Like they can't just walk in; you have to invite them. But the
which is an
thing,
interesting one.
yeah, we didn't talk about that. Sorry, but to bring that up, if you think about it, these are mythological creatures. Their intelligence is going to be a lot higher than ours because most of them are, I don't want to say immortal, but most of them live for a lot longer than we do. So they would find natural loophole, like a natural loophole with the vampire situation. Welcome, Matt. That is an indirect way. I know it sounds stupid, but that is an indirect way of
No,
saying come in my home. Or if you have a
listen,
welcome mat that says welcome in or come on in or whatever, that is an indirect way of saying come in my home.
So you're saying
Therefore,
the one I ordered that says "Don't come in," that's gonna keep protecting from vampires.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I just never thought of that. That's
yeah. But
interesting.
like,
And
if you think about it in a
well,
natural loophole sense way, so like with the demon situation, like you might believe in, say you're an atheist, you don't believe in any of it, but you have some kind of depiction of a horror isk like thing that you do believe in, they could transition into something like that as a natural loophole to take hold. I think that is an aspect that we were completely not thinking about. I'm
I
just
am
saying. I mean,
no, I've got two thoughts on that, and one of them, and because that's a good question, and I'm trying to think back to the account of Legion in the New Testament, and I'm trying to remember. So I want to say there was an account of somebody that the demon was cast out of, and then they were told to repent and find their something along the lines of repent and find your way, repent and which is really
uh,
what repent means is to turn into a new way. So that which if that's the case, and I'm not saying it is, I'm trying to find it and probably won't in time. If that was the case, then it'd be interesting to argue that with the idea of maybe they can affect believers. Um, as far as having the set rules, um, the problem with them the problem with them being exclusive to believers is also that if you notice, the Catholic Church has their own way of exercising demons, like their own ritual and things like the chant and all
yeah.
that stuff. But that wasn't in the New Testament.
Hmm.
So they're getting that from their own material. And now, what a Catholic would tell you is they'll tell you that they are not that their teachings are not superior to the Bible. It's just equal with the Bible. But if that was true, then anything taught by the Bible would still be the way they could do it. So why can't they cast out demons the way it was in the New Testament? The
I
truth
do.
is,
I
I don't,
do.
I don't, I don't think they can because I don't think A, that demons are still possessing people, and B, I don't think that their methods, being not what's in Scripture, would work anyways.
So I promise you a curveball thought at the end of this
I knew it was coming.
before we wrapped everything up. So you know as well as I do that a majority of these things that we talk, not like just the ones that we talked about, that a majority of them are more leaned towards children, or like children are more susceptible.
Right.
What if, hear me out on this, what if movies, TV shows, books, all of that are preparing us for not a, I don't want to say a great awakening, but a great realization that all of these things are actually real. And the reason, hear me out on this is where the curveball comes in. The reason kids are more susceptible to them is because they still see them. They're not taught to not believe in them yet. Like let's use ghosts and demons. We didn't talk about ghosts, we were just talking about demons, but they kind of sort of go hand in hand. Kind of. Let's say the reason children are more susceptible to seeing and talking with ghosts is because they haven't been taught by books and older people that those are fake. No, you don't have an imaginary friend. Now hear me out on that, because everybody's had them. I'm sure you had one when you was a kid. I know I had one. I can tell you, I'm pretty sure his name was Johnny. The same name as me. I remember clear as day having full on conversations with a man that name was Johnny, and I described him to a T to mom, to a T, and it was mom's old best friend that died. He died in a car accident. Never met him a day in my life, but I could tell you exactly what he looked like, and we would have conversations. I remember that. Now, what if same things go with demons, vampires, throw mermaids and stuff in there, but you throw like werewolves, witches, warlocks, all of those things. What if every single one of those are real? What if they're all real and we're taught not to believe in them? That's why we don't see them or we don't believe in them. Because we just talked about, if you don't believe in it, you're not affected by it. What if all of those creatures are 100% real, but we're taught not to believe in them, so we don't deal with it or we don't see them? That's why children are more susceptible to.
Okay.
Told you with a curveball. Ooh, make
All
you
right.
think right
So
there.
if I told you there was a disease going around that makes your arm swell up to the size of a tree trunk,
As of what?
the size of a tree trunk,
Okay.
but my arms are normal. What are you going to say? You're
Uh,
full of it
yeah.
because you've never seen the account of it. Like this is a new disease. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next day I come back and my arm's the size of a tree trunk. You see the result of what I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you didn't see it yourself yet, and it hadn't happened to you personally, you still believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, there is an account actually in the Bible of someone speaking to a dead person's spirit. In fact, it was King Saul.
Mm-hmm.
Went to a lady who summoned the spirit of a prophet. Okay. So there was a time when people could do that. But it had to be summoned. It wasn't here already.
Ouija board.
And I don't know if it was a Ouija board. I'm
No,
gonna
I'm
assume
just
it
saying.
wasn't.
You said summon. That's the way to summon them.
Yes,
Ouija.
but well, and I won't go into why I don't think ghosts interact with us now. But that's something different. And I'll
Yeah.
say at some point it was possible. So the belief would have continued if it was happening often. We never would have lost that belief in it, right?
Okay.
There might be some people teaching against it, but there's
I'll
others
use
who
an
are still
argument
seeing it.
of from the movie It. I'll use that argument.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
Okay. Well, the point of being with Pennywise is after you hit a certain age, you naturally quit believing it. So therefore, like when the adults came back, or the adults that lived in Derry their whole life, they didn't see him anymore, and they weren't affected by him because they didn't believe him in any kind of sense. What if naturally you grow up and you hit a certain, like, let's say puberty? Let's just throw that out there because it'd be an easy stage in life for child to small adult. You hit puberty and you just naturally kind of like a light switch flips. Something happens and you just naturally quit believing in them. That could be a possibility. Now again, this is a huge stretch, but I'm just saying, what if we are conditioned to not believe, even though these things are real, and one day there might be a great awakening? That sounds corny, but I can't think of another way to say it. We have a great awakening where everything just kind of that switch flips back, and we're like, holy shit, all of this is real.
I guess my problem with that is it was recognized that there were a lot of people who could do that. There's even references to the early New Testament about sorcerers where it's guessed that might have been what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But all the references to that were adults. So what would happen is people were going to these people and they would have them summon the spirits so they could ask the spirit something about their past life, which by the way would be a hint from the Bible that we remember our life when we were dead. But anyways, so there's adults and they're doing it, but they do it regularly enough that everyone around them knew they were doing it. In fact, there's even there were laws against it. If it was that common and that understood, then I would want to. I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but I would be interested to trace back and figure out when that belief would have died off and why. Because it seems like it's something that people would have continued doing. Whether it's because you've got a family member that passed away and you just want to see him again, or maybe you've got somebody that lost something valuable and you want to know where it is, or where that back in the day we used to bury treasure. Where's your buried treasure? I don't think that behavior would have ever stopped. So they wouldn't have had time for the belief to fade away. That makes sense. The only way I can think of it, something that might have affected it, would be if you got into different religions, because a lot of religions were against the raising of spirits.
Yeah.
Maybe there were enough of them that were against the raising of spirits that the belief could have died away some. But even then, like Greek mythology didn't have a lot of that. But they have a lot of stories of people attempting it and not being able to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, go to, you know what the spirits are, they're in the underworld, but once you get there, you're not coming back. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they had the stories, but they didn't. I admit they had the stories and believe it couldn't happen. So I guess that would have been possible. But it seems more like, because it lines up more with the timeline I believe in, that at that point they no longer could. And so that's what they were explaining with their stories, is this is not something that you can do.
Well, see, on that case, I'm not just talking about demons. I'm talking about everything.
I'm talking about anything anything that you might consider spirits, as far as angels, demons, ghosts.
Yeah, see, I'm talking about all of the supernatural creatures.
As far
Everything.
as anything other than those, I think
because there's a bunch of them that we didn't touch on that we're going to touch on in part two,
yeah.
such as like I'll throw a couple of them out there. I don't know if it's going to be part 2 necessarily. It might be a part 2, part 3 type deal. Like Wendigos, Skinwalkers. There's still a lot of cases that I can make some solid arguments for with stuff like that. Now, those aren't. I wouldn't necessarily say those are tied specifically to children to be more susceptible to, but stuff like that. That's what I mean. Like there could be.
Yeah.
We're so conditioned to say these are fake. These are fiction. Fiction is fake, right? I always get it confused with fiction, nonfiction. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're so conditioned in our minds nowadays that those are fake, that potentially all of that could be real, and we're just conditioned to look at it in a different sense.
The only thing I would say about that is if you're going to take any other supernatural creature into account, or even all the other ones into account,
Yeah, I'll take all of them.
Those, then I would still say that if any of the ones that had any level of intelligence, that revealing that they existed would have happened before now, because they wouldn't want us to get to this point where we could so easily defend ourselves.
Now, I will counter that with an argument that I've made before. What if we know about it, but we don't know about it? Like our societies don't know about it because our governing bodies think that we don't need to know. That is a possibility. There is information out there that we are not privy to.
As much as I'm a skeptic, I readily admit there's got to be secrets the government hasn't even had.
Yeah.
The only thing that would be is the only way it could get to that point where the government was capable of hiding it from everybody would be if they waited too long to reveal themselves. And again, if they had any level of intelligence, I don't think they would have. I think the Dark Ages would have stayed the Dark Ages, because not only is that when all the mythology kind of jumped and grew, but that's when they would have been thriving, because humans were still primitive. They were also fighting each other all the time. They were scared of their own shadows. Like that would have been the perfect time for them to do it. Even right after that, they'd have been like, "Hey, we should have done this already. Let's do it."
Yeah.
But now getting to the point where there's all kinds of other diseases and sicknesses, there's the technology we have to defend ourselves. They would have by now. And they would have done it in a way where we knew.
Well, that is where we're going to end it. I know this episode is longer than it normally is, but we went on we dove down the rabbit hole. It happens. Now, I was told last episode, I apologize, I messed up. I did not turn the comment section on, so I do apologize for that. It will be turned on for this one, I promise. Y'all know I am also a streamer. I make TikTok videos. I do a bunch of other stuff. The links to all of my socials will be down in the description below if y'all want to check me out. He doesn't do any of those things, so I can't plug him, even though I want to. Unfortunately, we will have an email address that will be in the link, that will be in the description as well. If you want to hear us talk about anything specifically, and or if you want to potentially be on the show with us, just you'll email us, or you can message me directly on my Discord, which is in my link tree that will be in there, and we can discuss it and potentially have you on here. Other than that, I think until next time, we'll see y'all. Keep thinking. I'm just letting y'all know I'm on to something. Y'all have a great night. Bye.